Welcome to part 2 of What's New in MLA Style. I'm Michelle Clark from Bedford St. Martin's. We publish textbooks for English and for composition. This summer, we're publishing a supplement that captures the most significant changes in MLA style as set forth in the Modern Language Association's 9th edition of the MLA Handbook. In part 1 of this series, I gave an overview of some basic formatting changes in MLA style. Changes to the setup of an essay and to both in-text and end-of-text citations. In this video, we'll look at changes related to online sources, social media, and language. Now, it's no surprise that so many of our students get their sources exclusively online, and more writers are citing sources from social media. So let's look at MLA guidelines for formatting works cited entries for these kinds of sources. There are a few changes to report. First off, let's talk about URLs. The guidelines say to copy the URL directly from the browser. It's okay for the URL to be a live hyperlink if students plan to deliver their work in digital format and want readers to be able to click on the links. MLA says that short lines before a URL are no problem, even if the lines look a little unbalanced. The accuracy, according to MLA, is more important than the appearance. In the previous edition, deleting the protocol was mandatory. MLA has now made it optional to delete the protocol. That's the HTTPS, if writers or their readers don't want live links. MLA allows publications such as textbooks to introduce line breaks so that the lines look even. That's what we do in our booklet of MLA guidelines and in most of our English textbooks. Our models will mostly look like the second example, but some will look like the first. Note that I use color in this video for emphasis only. Students should not set any part of their citations in bright orange. When a URL is more than 3 lines, as can be the case with some sources from databases, MLA recommends truncating the URL and retaining the host. In this case, the host is my college's Gale database. MLA recommends avoiding shortening services such as Bitly. Works cited entries for social media posts have special rules about how to style the author name. MLA requires the account or display name, followed by the user's social media handle in brackets. You can see examples here for individuals as well as one for a group. Most social media posts don't have a traditional title. So in the title position, writers in most cases are asked to put the text of the post in quotation marks. When citing a visual post or focusing on a visual element of a post, writers are asked to offer a description, and you can see that in the second example here. Most online videos are treated like short works from websites, and that you're required to give the author or speaker the title, the website, the date, and the URL. Now, a lot of students view TED Talks and YouTube videos as part of a research project. If a student views the video on the TED site, the citation would look like the first example here. If they view the video on YouTube or another sharing site, they need to include the uploader as part of the citation. All YouTube citations include the uploader as a contributor who is separate from the main author or speaker. The MLA handbook was developed during COVID, and what were we all doing during COVID? Streaming shows and podcasts. Too many for me, I'm embarrassed to admit. MLA has new guidance for episodes and for whole series. Writers are required to include information about where they access the work, either on a website or an app, and they're required to give season and episode numbers, unless they're citing an entire series, which is shown here in the third example. Within the body of an essay, students should be citing words and ideas that they borrow from social media posts, just as they do for other sources. Students should use the account name, whether it's a traditional name like Roxanne Gay or a pseudonym like Grammar Girl. A handle with an @ sign should not be used in an in-text citation. As shown in these examples, the author names can be placed in a signal phrase or they can be placed in parentheses. Neither source has page numbers, so there's no need to include pages in parentheses. Let's turn now to language concerns, our third topic in the series. The MLA handbook features a brand new chapter in its 9th edition, Principles of Inclusive Language. I'll quickly mention 4 new guidelines. First, when the dictionary gives 2 stylings for a term such as black or deaf, MLA advises writers to choose one, be consistent, and be mindful of their audience's preferences and expectations. Second, MLA includes guidance about how to quote a source that includes a potentially offensive or inflammatory term. Writers do not have to reproduce the term in their own work if doing so would be painful or problematic for them or for members of their audience. MLA's advice is to use a dash after the first letter of the term. Third, MLA is on board with this idea that pronouns matter. And although they give some pretty conservative advice to revise in order to avoid pronouns when possible, the organization does embrace singular they as, quote, a tool for making language more inclusive. Writers are advised to use it for individuals who use they, them, and their as their pronouns, and are now allowed to use it for singular third-person generic nouns. Progress! And finally, here's more new guidance about pronouns. MLA promotes audience awareness by advising writers not to assume that their audience shares their culture, identity, background, or beliefs. And to that end, the advice is to avoid using the pronouns we and our. If writers use those pronouns, the guideline is to ask whether their language is clear about who we is. Who's included? Well, that does it for our second segment of What's New in MLA Style. Be sure to visit us in the English community, where you'll be able to access our new MLA booklet, as well as teaching tips, webinars, classroom resources, and posts from our authors on our Bits blog. And talk to your rep if you're interested in packaging the booklet with your Bedford St. Martin's title for the 2021 academic year. I'm Michelle Clark. Thank you for watching.